So after a year or two of radio silence from Hasbro, we finally have the future of the My Little Pony brand, and honestly, I don't know what to think. Hollywood journalist Jeff Snyder has reported that Hasbro Entertainment and Amazon MGM Studios are in the phases of producing a live-action My Little Pony film. Now, after hearing about this news when it broke, my first thought was, is this real and actually happening? From what I understand and have heard from various sources is that Jeff is not the most reliable source of information, but given the fact that multiple other news outlets have already reported on this movie, I think it's safe to say that there may be a grain of truth to this story. We do also know from previous marketing material that Hasbro has planned a total brand reinvention for MLP in 2027, and this adds more credibility to this rumor. The news first broke on Jeff Snyder's blog, and unfortunately for me, the full original article by him is paywalled, so I'm not going to bother looking at that. But there's an article by Variety.com which presumably provides the same information. Now, there's not much information here that gives concrete facts on what this project is, and this article is mostly a basic rundown on the MLP brand generally. But the most important takeaway is that this is all still in the early development phase, and there's no creative team in place yet to execute production of this film, assuming it exists. That's pretty much it for actual news, and there's no footage or trailer or anything from this movie yet. So have some Homeworld Free War Games gameplay while I discuss the idea of MLP going live action. First off, I gotta say, having the next iteration in a franchise that's historically always been animated is a risky move for My Little Pony, especially when it comes at a time when live-action remakes are being pumped out non-stop. This also comes at a time when MLP's brand relevance has also been pretty low, with the 5th generation of the franchise being prematurely cancelled after not being the success Hasbro wanted it to be. Now, I'm not the world's biggest G5 hater, and I'll admit that I've seen all the content from those shows, and I enjoyed it. But other people have done their own autopsies of G5, and that's not the purpose of this video. What I will say on this matter is that the blame lies squarely at Hasbro's feet for mismanaging that project, so I'm not so confident in their ability to successfully produce something so different from what has been the norm for My Little Pony. Hasbro has one shot at making a banger here, and they all need their chefs in the kitchen if they want to avoid having MLP become even more culturally irrelevant. The worst case scenario with this movie is that this is just bland regurgitated nostalgia bait slop akin to the criticism we've seen get lobbed at many of Disney's live-action remakes. In this scenario, I think it would be likely that we see MLP's more popular characters, that is to say the Generation 4 main 6, get dropped into the real world for whatever reason and are forced into a basic return home plot where not much substance happens. Sort of like Equestria Girls without people getting turned into multicolored humans. But how could this movie be good? Well, there's a few ways, one of which is to essentially make this movie an isekai. Generation 1 of My Little Pony is humans in the pony world, with the most obvious example being Megan Williams. MLP loves to reuse characters, and that's what they essentially did with G4, so it's entirely possible that they could reuse human characters like Megan, and have it work well if they simply go the extra mile to make them familiar enough to bring in older fans, but unique enough to still be interesting. As for the world itself, I think a sort of fantasy setting could contrast well with the human world, sort of like what was done with Disney's The Owl House. You could have humans and the ponies moving back and forth from the human world to the pony world and still have it be compelling. If the movie is done right, it could lay the groundwork for a series to follow it. Hasbro just needs to let the staff working on it do their own thing, and avoid doing what they did with G5, where executive meddling and contractual obligations just sunk the whole thing. Overall, I think the concept of a live-action MLP movie is very high risk. There are pathways for it to be good, but Hasbro needs to play the right hand for it to be a success, and given their track record, I don't have high hopes. Nevertheless, I will avoid having unfair expectations until we see more of this movie. At the very least, the memes have been funny, and I expect them to continue to be funny. If you've stuck around this video for this long, thanks for listening to my semi-incoherent ramblings. Okay, bye!